Hey everybody, it's Jason Blah here, and I had a subscriber ask a question, which I will flip in here for you guys. He basically wants to know, how do we compare strength between men and women? Because I did all the video on the transsexual stuff and transsexual athletes, and he's genuinely curious of, can a woman be trained without drugs to be stronger than a man who isn't trained? How does this stuff break down? So let me put on my +5 hat of weaponsmithing, work on my crafting a little bit, and let's talk about this. All right, great question. What people need to understand, there are inherent differences in how men and women gain strength. However, it's not necessarily due to lower quality musculature in women, meaning if a woman gains a certain amount of muscle mass of a certain fiber type in a given point, she's going to gain just as much strength in that particular muscle as a male does. The differences are largely due to hormones, which will cause different rates of muscle growth, as well as things like frame size, structure size, and muscle fiber distribution. Women, pound for pound, tend to have just as much muscle mass, like as far as total muscle fibers in their lower body, as men do. But the fact is they're oftentimes slightly shorter in stature, smaller frame, and lighter weight. And again, this isn't accounting for the body composition differences either, because women tend to carry more body fat than men. And the minimums that they can get away with is actually much higher than men. So women can only get so lean. And so that will affect strength to weight ratios. That's why women are given different Wilks scores in powerlifting. Doesn't mean, of course, that women and men need to train differently. But to give you guys an example to see where we're coming from with this, I'll give you an example of people I personally worked with, who I know very well. I'll compare a friend of mine I helped train years ago with my girlfriend Brittany, who you guys have watched her progression to some extent. Okay, I had a friend who at the time was working at EMS, and it was basically a reserve police officer who did like police work once a week as a reservist. Now he wanted to get into better shape. He wanted to get stronger because he had to grapple someone who was a younger guy who had just been playing high school football and everything, and the guys really struggled to grapple him and manhandle him when he was doing his reserve work, in addition to the fact that he just wanted to be able to lift patients and stuff better when he was doing EMS. So he started working with me. Now to get an idea of stats, the guy's around 6 foot, 6'1", was like 200 pounds. And most people who saw him didn't think he was like a small or a weak or a fat guy. 6 foot, 200 pound non-lifter, who at least has to lift patients and stuff, who, again, actually looked like he had a little bicep and everything, even before he really lifted. And you would think that he would be fairly strong. He was 30 years old at the time, and he didn't appear to be unhealthy or particularly out of shape for his age. Again, had a job that required him to, again, pull stretchers and stuff a lot. And he didn't eat bad like a lot of other people in his line of work. He ate fairly well, so he didn't really get particularly fat. He wasn't like, didn't have a big gut or anything. So about 6 foot, 6'1", 200 pounds. And when I had him test to see where his strength was, I was kind of shocked at how weak he was as an untrained individual. And we need to keep it in mind here is the difference between people who do hard manual labor versus untrained people, because people who do hard manual labor are oftentimes a lot stronger. But if people were to guess based on the stats I just gave you, they'd be shocked at what his lifts were. We had him test the bench press, and his max was 65 pounds that he could touch his chest, pause, and press it with. When we went to, I believe, 75 pounds, the bar stuck on his chest and it sat there for 4 seconds, and he turned red trying to press it off his chest. He couldn't bench press 75 pounds. All right, and this is a 6 foot tall, 200 pound male. And then when we went to deadlift, he got really upset because he told me he was sure he could deadlift at least 300 pounds. Now his reason for this is because he had, a month before that, he and another paramedic had lifted supposedly a 700-pound man on a stretcher off of a bed onto a stretcher and then rolled him. And so he said he felt that because he had lifted that guy, he was good for 300 pounds on the deadlift. His max deadlift was 120 pounds. That was the most he could pull from the floor. And that was, I had him kind of work up to that a little bit from like something like 95 pounds. I don't remember how we got to exactly 120. It was something with the plates we had. We got to 120. And it was a little heavy for him. And he said, well, he could lift more than that. And we put 135 on the bar, and it stuck on the floor, and he turned red and couldn't break it off the floor. He couldn't pull, even break one side didn't come off on a deadlift. He couldn't pull 135 off the floor. So you guys kind of see where this is going as far as strength goes with men versus women. This is an untrained person. Couldn't deadlift 135 and thought he would be able to do at least 300. It really upset him. Now, I worked with him, and it turned out he was fairly genetically gifted. And, you know, you would expect that for a guy who had a little bit of bicep and everything going who doesn't work out. I think we had him 16 weeks into a program, and he had very limited equipment at home. And in 16 weeks, he got to a max deadlift of 305. And I believe he could bench press like 185. I think we had to do floor presses at the time, though. So he was floor pressing. He could max 185. Or it might have been even like 205. I don't even remember now, but I know it was at least 185. And that was after 16 weeks. Then he got tired of lifting and he quit. But pretty much how it went for him. But same guy also, I know we had to do like a lot of cleans and front squats and everything for him to train his legs. But he did a lot of deadlift, floor press, rows, overhead press. I mean, he made do with what he had. He had an Olympic set at home and some little dumbbells and stuff. So that's the progress he made. Now, conversely, Brittany, after like a year of me training her, you guys saw where she's at on her training. She had lost 40 pounds. And we've done on camera. A lot of it's on her Instagram. Some of it's on here. Some of it's on my Instagram. She has done bench press with 75 pounds, right? 75 pounds, which was more than his max. She does sets of 8. So we've seen her do sets of 8 with 75 pounds, which is more than the max of this untrained 200-pound man. She deadlifts, the best deadlift we've done on camera was 185 for 5 reps versus his 120 max for a single. So to answer the question, yeah, you train a woman with real strength training for a year, and she's going to be tremendously stronger than the average male who doesn't exercise, doesn't do hard manual labor. However, the difference, of course, is going to be when you have a male who has done hard manual labor, that might be a lot stronger. I've seen guys walk in who do manual labor jobs who can deadlift 225, 300, something like that, who don't work out. All right, and people need to understand that difference. Depending on what sort of manual labor they do, they might be a lot stronger than you expect. A lot of these guys are actually stronger than guys who are 6 months into a strength training program. And it's just because of years of doing hard physical labor and lifting things, carrying them, all sorts of stuff, just depending on what they've done. So you need to understand there's a difference between untrained versus an actual laborer who actually has to lift a lot of things for their job. Big, big difference. But an untrained male who doesn't really do hard labor every day, doesn't work out, yeah, women will blow them out of the water. The average woman, you can put them in the gym for 6 months to a year on a good strength training program, and she will be stronger than him. The problem we get into, though, is that you notice that men gain strength at an enormously faster rate. You know, the same thing. I took this guy who, Brittany, after a year, could basically add 50 pounds to his deadlift max and rep it 5 times. All right? Same thing, add 10 pounds to his bench press max and rep it 8 times. But you put this guy in the gym for 16 weeks on a good strength training program with good progression, good food, what happens? It's 16 weeks, he's dramatically stronger than women are who've been training for a year or two on a similar program. Well, the reason this matters is when we start talking about, again, the transgender stuff by comparison, that's kind of the point. If someone's transgender, their hormones might be lower. They lose some of that anabolic benefit, but you know what? They keep the structural differences. The genetic differences are there. If they went through puberty as a male, they have different bone density. They're definitely going to have different muscle fiber distribution, and that muscle fiber distribution that they're born with, that's completely genetic. So in terms of upper body strength and power, it's going to be much, much higher. It's going to be much higher. So the same issues occur when you start training a transgender athlete who was previously a male and has undergone reassignment surgery and gone on hormones, there's still some structural differences, and those structural differences are going to make a tremendous difference. They are still generally going to be pound for pound stronger and more explosive than a similar female who did the same type of training. They're probably going to have more muscle, they're going to have less fat, they're going to be stronger and faster, even in spite of the shift in hormone levels. Now, the hormone levels will make a difference too, so that will cut some of the advantage out, but you're not going to change the bone structure differences, and you're not going to change the muscle fiber distribution, and particularly their upper body is going to be more powerful. They're going to be stronger, more powerful, and everything else with their upper body. They're going to be able to punch harder, they're going to be able to throw harder, purely due to being trained and still having that extra muscle fiber distribution, all those extra fast twitch fibers and more total muscle mass in their upper body. So there's still going to be differences, and we kind of see that again when dealing with males versus females on this stuff, because by comparison, even you take a deadlift, which is a full body exercise. I took a 30-year-old untrained male. 16 weeks he went from a 120 deadlift to a 305. How many women out there spend years trying to get to a 305 deadlift? A lot of them. You don't see many women who do that in their first year or even second year. Right? That's relatively rare. And he was doing this without a belt, without straps, without anything like that. 16 weeks. And keep in mind, as a 30-year-old male, his testosterone is already starting to decline, his recovery is starting to decline. So it's hard to compare that. So he's not even getting the full advantage of a young man's testosterone at that point. So there are definite differences as far as this goes in trained and untrained. But can females train to be a lot stronger than an untrained male? Yes, absolutely. A woman who comes in and strength trains, power lifts, does all that stuff is probably going to be stronger physically than a male who doesn't train, doesn't lift, doesn't play any sports, nothing that's going to give him extra speed and strength. She is probably going to be faster and stronger than he is, even if he outweighs her by 20, 30, 40 pounds. However, the moment he starts lifting weights, if he goes on a proper strength training program, he will catch that woman within a few months sometimes. So a woman who's been training 2 years, a male's going to overtake her in 2, 3, 4 months sometimes. That's sometimes all it will take. To answer the question, that's pretty much how it breaks down. So hopefully it explains some of the differences there. All right, guys, but that's really all I have to say on that today. I hope it's been informative, and I will talk to you guys next time.